Hi, from wherever you're joining us. Good to have you join us on Justice, a lawyer's hangout where we dissect legal issues and educate the masses of the law. But for today's episode, we shall begin this discussion with the latest story coming from the political scene in Nigeria. And I will tell you right now that the House of Representatives has approved the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State, along with 6 months suspension of Governor Fubara and his deputy and all elected members of the assembly, as announced by President Bola Tinubu. Now, the seal of approval for the president proclamation came via voice notes during plenary on Thursday. Now, but the South-South Governors Forum, led by the governor of Bayelsa State, Doediri, are vehemently opposed to the presidential declaration and have called for the reversal of the emergency role in Rivers State. This is amid political tension in the states. President Bola Tinubu has also appointed Admiral Iboket Ibas as the administrator in the oil-rich South-South states. Ibas was the Nigeria's chief of naval staff between July 2015 and January 2021, and now the administrator of Rivers State. This will take us into our discussion today, and of course, like I told you before, this is just as a lawyer's hangout. I am Chikot Naka Dili, and of course, joining me in this conversation is Barrister Ebenezer Madi. Good to have you join me.
Good to have you.
And just next to Barrister Ebenezer Amadi is Barrister Munirat Adama.
Thank you for having.
Well, maybe she just say without the ladies now. And of course, we also have in this conversation Barrister Samuel Neme.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure today.
And good to have you all join me in this conversation. And now we'll begin the conversation with Barrister Meme. What's your opinion?
Well, what you see today is a continuation of what we refer to a lawless society we find ourselves in this country. The declaration and ultimately the suspension of the governor and the elected state House of Assembly members is indeed a gross violation of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because we saw what happened on the 18th, in the evening of that day, when the president announced the suspension of an elected governor. Whatever be the reason, we're all aware that the Supreme Court had ruled over the matter and also instructed clearly the governor to represent the budget to the State House of Assembly.
And did that happen?
Yes, I think, we know there is a lot of political play going on in that state, but we must follow the rule of law. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had no power whatsoever to suspend an elected governor or the governor of Rivers State. And that's the basic issue right now. And of course, just like you started, you mentioned rightly that the House of Representative has also approved the suspension or ratified the suspension as declared by the president. The issue now is, does the president have the power, the constitutional power to suspend an elected governor? The answer is no. So, for me, as far as I'm concerned, we still have the governor, the similarly Fubara, as the governor of Rivers State.
And it's also quite interesting to note that as lawyers, you people know about the precedent cases. And of course, before laws are given, many times the judges relies on precedents. I'll take you back a little to the start of the Fourth Republic. You know, after Nigeria returned to constitutional democracy, President Olusegun Obasanjo took over, of course, as the leader and, of course, the president of Nigeria. But in the course of his administration, two-term administration, what we saw was on two consecutive times between 2014 and 2016, the president gave a state of emergency, declared a state of emergency in two states as a way of calming felt nerves in those states. So this is apparently not the first time that a president of a democratic country like Nigeria is ordering a state of emergency. Barrister Adama, what's your take on this?
For me, the president declaring state of emergency is not the bone of contention.
Then what is?
Because he has the constitutional rights, according to Section 301, to declare state of emergency when he believes the right of the citizens are at stake, or even the country at large is at stake. So that is not even the issue for me. What I have issue with is the president going against the rule of law and against the constitution we have in place to suspend a sitting governor.
So in the case of Rivers, for instance, on the same day when the president took over, gave the declaration, we saw 2 explosions. Isn't that enough reason why the government, the federal government, should, move into the states to ensure that, to forestall any further breakdown of law and order?
Okay. First of all, let me correct the statement you made that for a state of emergency to occur, that the governor must step aside. It's not right.
It's not always the case.
It's
or
not right. It's not the constitution. Now,
we have seen that happen before now.
Yeah, but does not mean that it is the right thing. When it happened during the Obasanjo regime, it was challenged, and the Supreme Court
happened under Goodluck Jonathan's regime.
Yes, the Supreme Court had already ruled on that issue of removal
In what
of
case
the governor.
did the Supreme Court rule?
In the case of Durie versus versus the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria, because Federal Republic of Nigeria, you will see that the Supreme Court ruled that the removal of the governor cannot be done through a state of emergency. We are talking about elected officials of a state. You cannot remove them through a state of emergency. The state of emergency is provided under Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that section, the beginning, it says subject to the provisions of the Constitution. Subject to the provisions of the Constitution, which means that it applies subject to other provisions in the Constitution. And when you look at Section 188 of the Constitution, it made express provision on the procedure for removal of a governor. And that can be done only through impeachment, no other means. So if there is any other means for removal of an elected governor, then Section 188 could have provided for it. Section 188 is very conclusive on the procedure of removal of a governor.
But prior to this time, what we also saw was the State House of Assembly moving to impeach the governor of the state, Sam Fubara, and barely 48 hours after the president came up with a state of emergency. So is there actually a reason why it went that way?
Now, we all know that for a long time, there has been a political crisis in Rivers State between the House of Assembly, which are loyalists of the current Minister of FCT, Wike, and the governor. Now, they have always wanted to impeach the governor. Allegedly, which was what led to the first attempt to demolish the House of Assembly. So now, when they attempted recently to impeach through writing the notice as required by law, they knew that they wouldn't do that. They would not be able to do that because they needed the consent, or they needed the chief judge of Rivers State to be with them. Because what the Constitution provides is that the chief judge must set a panel of 7 persons to do an investigation over any allegation of gross misconduct against the governor by any member of the National Assembly. So the power of impeachment does not solely lie on the House of Assembly. The chief judge has a major role to play by setting a panel, and that panel will investigate the allegation, and it is the decision of the panel that will decide whether the governor will be removed or not.
But in a case like as delicate as Rivers, we saw the president, picking up on the Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. A lot of people, of course, lawyers like you two, have objected that giving credence to the provisions of Section 180 of the same Constitution. And that brings me to my next question. Who do we blame? The president or the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution?
There is nothing wrong with the provision of the 1999 Constitution as amended. You made mention about the removal or the suspension of the governor during the time of President Obasanjo. And you will recall that the former President Olusegun Obasanjo was a military dictator. And at that point, when we transcend back to the democratic rule in Nigeria in 1999, you will still have that mentality of the military pattern of leadership. So he adopted that method, but when Goodluck Jonathan came on board, when state of emergency was declared in 3 states, the governors were not removed. The Section 305 of the Constitution states clearly the procedures through which state of emergency can be declared. And there is no provision in Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that states that a sitting governor can be suspended by the president. So what we are saying is the president does not have the power to suspend a sitting governor. Now, the issue has nothing to do with the provisions or the wordings of the Constitution. It's very clear. The president chooses to misinterpret the Constitution by bringing up, it's clearly stated there, all the sections, all the subsections of the Section 305 never give the power to the president to suspend an elected governor. If we allow this to skate through, we are going to set a very bad precedent for this country. It therefore means that the president can as well suspend all the governors in Nigeria. Citing session.
I do not even feel it's a misinterpretation. I feel it's a blatant disregard for the rule of law.
So
he just went ahead. This is the Constitution. I'm not following it.
He chose to. He chose to do it. Don't forget, if you look at...
But he was not working alone. Apparently, before the president comes out in that guise and manner.
But he was alone when he declared when he suspended the governor.
Must have also sought the advice of senior advocates and of course the AGF.
Yes.
So is it that the AGF of Nigeria misguided the president? Is that what you're saying?
You see, we even in Rivers State, I'm not supporting the governor Siminalayi Fubara, because he also have Attorney General there too, who also advise him on the procedures of law. Because we don't want to look at the issue of politics in Rivers State. The governor, if you listen to the speech by the Attorney General of the Federation, when he said that for the past 14 months, the governor demolished the State House of Assembly, prevented the legislative processes in the Rivers State, thereby also stifling the political process in Rivers State. Okay? Now, the question now is, if you want to look at the politics, you definitely have to blame everybody. The governor is not innocent in all of these things. He deliberately prevented the legislative arm of government from operating. But how can you resolve this issue? You can only resolve this issue through the procedures of law. The Supreme Court had ruled in the judgment that these procedures you guys have adopted is wrong. Of course, we know from all indication and by going through the conduct of the governor, it clearly shows that the governor has also violated so many other provisions of the law. So the process of removing of the governor lies with the State House of Assembly and in addition to the judiciary. The president have no power whatsoever to suspend a sitting governor. And that is what we are trying to say here, that look, you do not have the power. If you decide to remove a sitting governor and suspend the House of Assembly, it therefore means that if we allow this thing to skate through, in the long run, it is going to come back against all of us. And we, of
While
course,
we understand that portion of the Constitution, we need to also look at the remote and immediate causes that led to the declaration of the state of emergency. We need to think about the refineries, the people at risk, the issues, the squabble between the now ousted governor of the state, or suspended governor of the state, Fubara, and the minister and also the former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, and how that has affected the revenue generation of Rivers State and how it has affected the economy of Rivers State vis-a-vis Nigeria, because we still know that Rivers is the largest contributor in terms of crude oil to Nigeria. And crude oil, as of today, strengthens the Nigerian economy. So when the president wakes up to the news of 2 refineries, major refineries going down, what else do you expect, Adama?
Like Barrister Mamia said, I know you will, most people will always refer to the reason why the suspension was given or why the state of emergency was declared. Yes, there were tussles here and there. Yes, I think the budget for Rivers was withheld and all that. But that should not still take us from the fact that regardless of how the federal government want to handle or settle the Rivers issue, should not go outside the Constitution of Nigeria or the rule of law.
The President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, remains the chief security officer of Nigeria.
Yes.
So his first priority is to ensure
Indeed.
the safety of Nigeria.
Declaring a state of emergency, yes. But why suspend a sitting or a duly elected governor? Now, this action that he has even taken is not even diverting the minds of most Nigerians from the major issue that's even happening in Rivers State.
And what is the major issue?
Which is, one, the withholding of the budget and the tussle of power between...
Who do we blame for the withholded budgets? I mean, we saw the videos. It's viral.
Let me use the word allegedly.
For a governor to get to the State House of Assembly and then shut out of the premises, what does that tell you? Isn't that enough to assume that probably the members of the legislative arm in the state have passed a vote of no confidence on the government?
So if they have passed the vote of no confidence on Fubara, why don't they...
Based on the attitude.
Yes. Why don't they just apply Section 188? Section 188 to take him off, to impeach him from governance.
The impeachment process had started before we saw it.
So why didn't they just allow the process to just go to the end? As per, we are not barbaric citizens, or we are not citizens that are not governed by law. The truth is, no matter how beautiful we think, or no matter how nice we think the suspension of Fubara is because of his own attitude, we cannot use wrong approach to settle a wrong situation. That's just the truth.
Yeah, let me come in. First of all, there is something we need to understand. There are 2 basic issues on the table. Number 1 is declaration of state of emergency. And number 2 is the removal or the suspension of elected officials, including the governor, the deputy governor, and the members of the House of Assembly. They are 2 different issues. The declaration of state of emergency by the president is something that we will consider has the issues in the state, Rivers State, amounted a situation where a state of emergency could be declared.
Sorry to interrupt you, Barrister Ebenezer Amadi, but you would have to hold your thought. We'll go on a short break now, and when we return, the conversation continues. To stay.
Thank you.
As the people and members of LJE Green community, we share a deeper commitment to protect not only our environment, but also the rights and dignity of all individuals within our reach. Every day we are faced with the responsibility to uphold human dignity. If you see something wrong happening around you, do not turn a blind eye. We must act, because that is where our role as ambassadors come in. Being an ambassador does not require any superpower. it requires awareness, compassion, and the willingness to speak up. If you see something, say something. It's our duty to stand up for justice and amplify the voices of those who can't speak for themselves. One voice can spark a movement, and together we can create a nation that values human life. You can reach us on 070-5236-8821 or visit our website at www.ljenigeria.org to report a violation. Remember, if you see something, say something.
So it's still Justice, a lawyer's hangout, where we will dissect legal issues and, of course, educate the masses on the law. And on this episode of the podcast, we are discussing the state of emergency in Rivers State, the issues, and, of course, matters arising. Before we went on the break, Barrister Madi was sharing his thoughts. You may conclude on your thoughts while we wrap up the conversation.
Okay, yes. So for me, the situation in Rivers State is a political issue. And in my own opinion, it is just a strategy for the ruling party to take Rivers State. Yes, that is what is going on. Because during the tenure of Obasanjo, when the state of emergency was declared by the president and the two governors were suspended, the current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was among the people that protested. He said, no, that you cannot suspend elected governor. He said so. So why is he now acting on the same lane? Goodluck Jonathan did a declaration of state of emergency when there were serious security issues in Adamawa, Yola, and Borno State, which we all know people were kidnapped. There were serious issues. But he did not suspend elected government officials. He did not do that. So why should in 2025 for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to suspend elected government officials when there is not even a serious issue in Rivers State? What we have in Rivers State is a mere political issue. They said they bombed pipeline. Is it the first time they are bombing pipeline in Rivers State? We have seen militancy occur in a very high state in Rivers State, but the state of emergency were never declared.
But that's not a flippant issue. I mean, pipelines belong to the government.
Yeah,
regardless.
But when you are talking about declaration of state of emergency, when you look at, there's a provision in section 305 concerning the condition that must be met. It's either the federation or part of the situation is at war, or there is a public disorder that needs extraordinary measure to curtail. These are the issues.
Well, Barrister Meme, do you have similar opinions with that of Barrister Madi? And do you also think that there might be a subtle ploy to take over the state by the ruling or Progressive Congress?
Well, initially, I do not think it was with intention to really hijack Rivers State. Of course, we know this issue started from disagreement between the former governor, Wike, and the current governor, Fubara. And over time, it has generated to the level where we are today. And I think the president is trying to take advantage of the situation and looking at the crisis happening and the political interest in 2027 to hijack Rivers State. And that's what he's trying to do. So the president does not have the power from anywhere to suspend elected officials of a state. He does not have the power. And he can't do that even at this time. So, of course, we would encourage the governor to proceed to the Supreme Court for a further interpretation of the Constitution. But we know for sure that he does not have the power to suspend or appoint an administrator for any state in any part of the country.
Well, over to you, Barrister Adama, rather.
Earlier...
That's just as we wrap up this conversation.
Yes, earlier...
In 3 minutes, could you tell me if...
I'll try to wrap up in 3 minutes.
If the issue is an issue that concerns the judiciary, is the Nigerian judiciary in a mess?
Yes, before I even go to that point,
In 3 minutes.
Yes, I know. I remember one of your points you were making, you asked a very vital question, that before the president came to make this declaration, he must have consulted
Why?
a lot of persons that are surrounded. And this brings me to my fear. What is going on? And truly, before the president to come, I had the statement of the Attorney General of the nation. Let me not even delve into that because I have 3 minutes. But I feel the judiciary has a major role to play. As long as they do not collect their wings, I repeat it again, their wings and their power from the hands of the executive, then we are heading straight for the ground. And I just hope that we'll be able to come back from this. Because no matter what like Barrister Amadi said, I don't think the situation has amounted to state of emergency. But let us just, because Section 305 gave him the power to do that, and maybe the National Assembly will accept it. But why are you suspending a sitting governor just because you feel you can? And at this point, they are not afraid of anyone from any walks of life, not the journalists, not the media. Because even the media now is saying suspended governor. Not the lawyers, not judiciary.
Report what we see.
Of course, you guys have a major role also, just like the judiciary does. Judiciary now are under the whim and caprices of the executive. The legislators are under the whim and caprices of the legislative. Where does it put us?
Because we cannot substantiate that.
But from the breaking news you began with, you said that the greenhouse has given consent to both the suspension. Yes.
However, we did not also talk about whether or not the National Assembly has become part of.
So we are all waiting. We are here. We will see. But the truth is that the judiciary actually has a role to play. And I wish they would take their wings and power for Nigeria to go forward.
Absolutely.
From now on.
So I must sincerely thank you all for your time here on the show. It is Justice, a Lawyer's Hangout, where, of course, we dissect legal issues and educate the masses on the law. And I've been speaking with Barrister Ebenezer Amadi. Good to have your opinion on this podcast. Barrister Munirat Adama. Good to have your thoughts shared on this platform. And, of course, Barrister Samuel Meme. Always a pleasure having you join us.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you very much.
I am Chiko Natatili. Until we come your way again, do have a lovely time. Bye-bye.
Bye.